because I'm lodging a formal protest. Kadeen did not write down any sort of notes, agenda, anything. So if it sucks, all his fault.
All right, it's not going to suck because I'm involved, number one. But number two is that, look, this is not that kind of pod. All these jokes and everything, I guess you're going to try to keep it lighthearted, but whatever.
Okay.
So this is a special edition of all sorts of sports. We're gonna do. We're trying to start something out that called "This is Vegas," which is a term that I used to use when I'm back work at Geico, which was that like you'd have a room where anything could really go down in the sense the conversation could be freewheeling, and it stayed there in the room. It didn't go out to HR or anybody else. It was "This is Vegas." So I think it's one of these things. Now it's not quite "This is Vegas" rules because this is probably going to go on YouTube, and we get thousands of views. So maybe this might not get thousands of views, but it's not going to be quite "This is Vegas."
Yeah, maybe nothing like "This is Vegas."
Yeah, true. So, but the idea would be that we're not afraid to say what it is that we need to say, or to necessarily get our thoughts across, right?
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to do this is that you've been a guest on ASOS, the sports show, before, and hopefully you'll be a recurring guest coming soon. But me and you had a conversation. We've had several conversations over the last couple of weeks with everything that's been going down as far as like the police shootings and everything that's been happening in America as far as policing and the black community and this, that, and the other. And in particular, we were talking about the shooting of Daunte Wright.
Daunte Wright was the Minnesota
shooting, which was the cop pulled over. It was some conflicting stories about it. It was the air freshener and also the expired tags.
It was a combination of the two.
Two. She pulls him over. A couple other cops are there. As they're about to put handcuffs on him, he tries to get back in the car. She pulls what she says she thought was her taser, shoots him. He drives a few blocks, then succumbs to his injuries. Right now, when we were talking about it, there were a couple things that you said that like triggered me. I guess more. Wow, that's a terrible pun, but it literally
just got that's awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Bad.
Sorry. But it was this whole idea and everything that I'm hearing about this woman in the sense of how it was an accident and how you use the phrase unfortunate accident to describe it.
And it's also a crime, but yeah.
But I think the terminology itself kind of bugged me. Because, I mean, when you're talking about this woman, everybody puts the same articles over and over again about how she's a 26-year veteran, this, that, and the other. They show all these innocent photos and everything over that paints sort of a picture in my head of like this innocent woman that just happened to make this terrible mistake. Whereas Daunte Wright, for the most part, is getting ranked through the ringer. Like, here's all the crimes that he's done. He had a warrant out for his arrest. And it just bugs the shit out of me.
So yes, I completely understand, but especially because Daunte Wright, it boils down to Daunte Wright's getting character assassinated, especially by right-wing media, which is garbage. But because it all just boils down to no matter what he did before, what he didn't do, what he was charged, nothing he did deserved in that traffic spot before, regardless of whether he's guilty or not, justified him being killed that day.
Right.
He should still be alive, regardless of what you think of the guy beforehand, regardless of what you think of the guy behind. I was, my language was saying that I'm not particularly sympathetic to the cop, as in, I think she deserves to spend time in jail. I think she deserves to spend it because what she did was a crime. Her negligence resulted in the death of somebody. And in this case, it was a young black man. Unfortunately, too often in these cases, it's a young black man. But I've heard a lot on TV and a lot of people saying that they think it was intentional. And first of all, so anyone who doesn't know, I'm an attorney. I would never think that I could prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, like intention, from watching that video.
So I think that to me is the big point, right? Is that there's a difference between like what it is you think that could be proved in a court of law compared to what it is you actually think happened. So like when I watch the video and I see everything, I've held both a gun and a taser in my hand.
I've never held either. Well, I've held a shotgun in a...
They're very, very different things, right? And I was counting off that she had what she thought was the taser, but the gun in her hand, And there's a good 5, 6, 7 seconds that she has clearly not the right thing in her hand before she pulls the trigger. And it was something else that I had told you, was that she was also involved, not directly involved, but an officer-involved shooting a few years back, where she was one of the first officers to arrive on the scene after it happened. And she told the officers, hey, separate yourself, turn off the body camera. Because she's clearly aware of what the body camera picks up. Yeah. So it's like, to me, when we're talking about that rush to benefit of doubt or not, right? I'm seeing somebody who's in this 10 miles away from where the George Floyd thing happened, in a situation where she if she's 26 years on the force, she should know the difference between a taser and a gun. And then on top of those things, you have somebody that knows that it's important to make sure you are knowing what the body camera is picking up compared to not picking up.
Yeah, so the thing is, I understand that, but I just go to Occam's razor. I can't see why she would say, I'm going to tase you, I'm going to tase you, oh shit, I'm going to tase you. Is it because she wants a lesser charge? First of all, by doing that, she completely destroys any defense she might have, which is her best one. She thought her life was in danger. Now, that was a shitty defense anyways, because in no way in that video can you say, yeah, but she can't even say that she felt her life was in danger, because she was clearly saying, I'm going to use non-lethal force against you, essentially saying she doesn't feel she's in danger. But of course, you can use non-lethal force like a taser for a fair number of things. Like, people get tased for shoplifting if they're trying to run away and stuff like that.
But see, that's to me is the issue, is that even when we're looking at that sort of situation, I don't even see a situation where you'd want to even tase the guy.
I don't. So that's different. That's a use of force, whatever the Minnesota.
But see, that's my thing, is that, like, this benefit of the doubt that we give people is that when I look at police officers, I'm saying 26 years on the force. You should know the difference between a taser and a gun. You clearly know the difference between what gets caught up and doesn't get caught up on a body camera. To me, the thing is not just like a racial thing as much as it's, you have people, police officers a lot of times, that decide when they show up to a scene that the person they're dealing with is almost less than human. That they get to do things that they wouldn't necessarily do with other people.
Absolutely. So the racial bias, I think, comes in that there's no thing that says she has to use a taser or pull a weapon.
Right.
There's no thing that says you have to pull over somebody for an expired tag. You have to pull them over for an air freshener, crap like that. I mean, let's be real. The guy was pulled over because he was driving while black. It's a pretextual stop. Happens all the time. It's disgusting, but it's regular part of policing. I mean, there's just no way around that. It shouldn't be, but it is. So he's been pulled over because he was driving while black, because that's just what happens. And then he was used a taser gun. The cop pulled that on when he tried to get away, probably because he was a young black guy, and they felt that was the appropriate thing. And then that led to his death. I'm not saying that the race didn't play it. I think there's a very, very clear, from the reason to stop the guy all the way to the shooting of him. I think if at any point that guy is black and is white, he doesn't get shot.
I can get with you behind that itself. I think that what it boils down to for me in this particular case was sort of the language that's used in the sense of the way that the public and the masses talk about this thing is being an unfortunate accident. Well, I mean, if you're really looking at it play by play, most things kind of happen the way they're supposed to happen in the system.
It was a series of poor decisions on her part, all of which at the time were justifiable according to, as far as I know, the law and departmental policy.
And see, that's my thing, is that the language, that I find language to be an extremely important thing.
Yeah.
And I think that you can kind of will certain things into existence by the way you talk about them.
Yeah.
And to me, when you say things like unfortunate accident, it sort of glosses over the bigger issues at hand, or the things that really create this perfect storm for these situations to happen all the time.
I completely understand it, because I read online, not from you, somebody writes, somebody was, I think it was Twitter, wrote, I hate when people call this an unfortunate accident, because unfortunate accidents keep happening to black people with police all the damn time.
Right.
Which I understand. It's so what I was actually thinking about this before we discussed it, before we were discussing it. And I agree, the language has power. And framing it as an unfortunate accident is problematic, because it makes it seem like it's an isolated one-off event that is not it. and especially because we know this is a systemic pattern. Obviously, in Minneapolis is a big problem,
huge deal,
but all over the country.
Because we're talking about this is right on the heels of what happened in Virginia with Second Lieutenant, I think it was Carlos Nazario, that the second lieutenant who's coming home from work or whatever, he's driving in a really, really fancy truck. It's night out. He's just bought the truck. He's got the temp tags in the back window. Podunk Virginia police officer turns on his lights, says that this dude does not have the tag on his truck, so he wants to pull him over. The second lieutenant does everything that I know that I would do in that situation, which is you slow down to a speed so that you know the cops aren't going to know that you're fleeing.
Had his blinkers on.
Blinkers on, pulled over into a gas station. You hear the cop on the dash cam video the entire time saying that now it's a high risk stop because he thinks that the fact that he was driving slow is suspicious. So when he gets to the gas station, he's already got guns drawn on him, ready to take him out while he's in his freaking uniform.
So so I didn't understand that. That one boggled my mind, to be honest, because I mean, a lot of these boggled my mind, but that one, like, he didn't. Stopping on the side of a highway is dangerous day or night.
Right.
Stopping at night is very, very dangerous.
Right.
Lots of cops get killed
right
on the side of highways.
You're doing something for both of these people, right?
Yeah.
But you have that situation where he does that, then the second officer shows up, and he's all big, brave, and bravado bullshit, and he's basically telling this guy, the second lieutenant tells him, I'm afraid to get out of this car. You should be afraid to get out of the car.
You're about to ride the lightning?
Right. You're about to ride the lightning, son. And he pepper sprays the shit out with his dog in the backseat. And then you have the other situation. I forget the kid's name. Adam something. The 13-year-old.
Adam starts with a T. Alex. Alex Toledo.
Yeah, Adam. I think it's Adam Toledo.
Okay.
Adam Toledo, the 13-year-old kid who clearly did not have a gun in his hand.
Yeah.
Because like I was explaining to you on the phone, most guys, if they do have possession of a firearm, the last thing they want to do is shoot anybody. So you got to be really careful in the sense of you're a cop responding to that thing. It's a 13-year-old. He tosses the gun away, throws his hands up, doesn't get a chance to do jack before he's getting riddled with bullets.
So that one, it's horrific, and there's. I will almost guarantee you that cop is going to face no charges for it.
I'd agree with you.
So, because it's going to be very hard.
It's an unfortunate accident.
Yeah, it's not. That one's not an accident. It was he intended to shoot to kill and killed the guy.
You got the kid in I think it's like Taylor Ham, if I'm not mistaken, in Maryland the other day, who had an airsoft rifle. And if I'm not mistaken, the cops got called knowing that he had an airsoft rifle and he was in his driveway, an airsoft rifle and a knife. And because this is one of these jurisdictions where I guess body cameras are optional, they didn't have it, but they showed up to the scene. They shot this 13-year-old, this young kid to death. I think he was 16. Shot him to death right up the road.
Yeah.
It's just, and he wasn't black, white. I think he was white or at least mixed kid. But it's just, when you have all these things that happen, to use the language of unfortunate accident, to me just seems like a slap in the face of the shit that happened. Because you could say Eric Garner's situation was an unfortunate accident.
It was that Eric Garner's was not. And I think the problem with it, unfortunate accident, is that there is it's about generalities versus specifics. Unfortunate accidents keep happening, and I'm using that word sarcastically. Unfortunate accidents keep happening over and over to the black community. At that point, it ceases to be an accident, a mistake, anything. It's part of a pattern and practice. The problem is that an individual incident can be an unfortunate accident. Now, I think that language was a little too light on my part. I think it was
but I'm going to push back on that.
Horrific negligence on her part.
Fair enough. But, yeah, and I appreciate you kind of backing off of that a bit. But I think the second part of our conversation a lot came with what happens next, right? Yeah. So you have all these things, these unfortunate accidents happening. And what did you say the solution or what the steps needed to be to solve this thing?
So I think the solution is difficult and time-consuming and necessary. So first is massive police reform. This includes things like significant investment in community policing, so that police have to respond to a lot fewer things, right? You have people who are not armed with guns, who are trained for mental health.
Specialized units.
Yes, right. Yeah. Huge amount of that. Two is a lot more. I mean, I don't want to be an asshole or anything, but we're gonna have to fire a lot of cops. Like, it's not just a bad apple type
Why do you
thing.
think you're being an asshole?
What?
Why do you think you're being an asshole by saying that?
Well, because, it's the whole thing about, most cops are good people. And I'm not saying most cops aren't good people, but it should require a certain type of person to be a police officer. That, like, if you may be a super nice, generous person who runs the local bakery and gives out cookies to all the children, regardless of race, but you may also be the type of person who reacts to fear with a quick trigger finger.
Right.
That means you're still a good person, right? Shouldn't be a cop.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you got. I think we need to do significantly more screening for police officers before they get hired, and screening for those already on the job, because you can't have the ones, like I read an article years ago now that said too many of the neighborhood bullies grow up and become the cops. Mm-hmm. You want the kids who stood up to the neighborhood bullies to grow up, and so you got to do that. Immense amounts of training and implicit bias training, de-escalation training, all that thing for cops who do have weapons, along with the ones who don't. And just as the fewer people armed with deadly weapons in law enforcement we can have, the better. So do what you can to, even cops, like people who can make arrests.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm surprised with your answer, because when we were on the phone,
no,
you guys go, there was a bigger.
This is step one. Okay. We're going through it here. This is step one.
Okay.
These are immediate, actionable items that. So I'm not sure about the politics of them. It might be real fucking hard to get some of these done politically, but
that's my thing. Is like it shouldn't necessarily be that. I mean, there's a financial incentive necessarily to keep things the status quo.
Yeah.
But I go as far as to say that there needs to be an abolishment of the way the policing itself is handled.
So,
it needs to go back to the drawing board.
So,
this is me and you talking.
A reinvention. So yes, I understand. A reinvention of the police. I'm perfectly.
I'm not
fine
beta
with that.
or roguing. I'm gonna go inside people's houses and fuck up my entire political campaign.
Yeah, I know. Don't say that. I'm trying to get people, even activists or like your concerned citizens, to not use things like abolish or defund, because that makes people who's
white people uncomfortable who are cool with the status quo.
Yeah, it makes white people who are. It makes white people, Hispanic people, and black people who are uncomfortable largely.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that. Personally, do I have any problem with those terms? No, but I'm not your target demo. I have a doctorate degree.
Fine. All right.
Yeah.
We didn't say words matter. So keep going. What's part of it? Are you done with that first step?
That's just basic police reform.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's other things that I haven't covered. But all of that it's really, most of that's targeted towards two things: preventing police from killing people, regardless of who their color or the color of their skin,
mm-hmm.
which will, of course, mainly impact black and brown people because they're the ones disproportionately getting killed by police.
Mm-hmm.
And two, some of the training and psychological screening will hopefully get the people who have too strong implicit biases from ever serving, and those cops aware of them, to those cops who are still, I mean, everyone has them, to be aware of them. The other thing is a societal wide thing where I don't think you're going to get equal policing and equal use of force against black people until you have a larger societal acceptance of black people, right? It says white supremacy has existed in this country since 1619. Yeah, exactly.
More American than either of those things. It was probably meant.
Yeah, well, almost certainly, definitely before baseball. Yeah, I don't know about apple pie, but yeah. So what I'm saying is, you have a huge problem in that you grow up in this country. You cannot escape white supremacy. You cannot escape racism. You cannot escape implicit bias against black people. Right. It's everywhere. And I think even if you have all those great policies in place, all those great laws, strong accountability if officers commit crimes, strong, prevention tools, de-escalation, much fewer things. You know what? Some cops still going to beat the shit out of a black guy and kill him with a nightstick. Like,
but see, that's the thing, is like the idea of the whole racial dynamic and changing the way that things happen, to me, is almost a moot point at this time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing where I was kind of surprised with the way you took step one, because I thought that when me and you talked the other day, you were much more about those bigger ideals.
Yeah, because I don't want you to stop there, because I don't think that alone is going to solve the problem.
But see, I think that's the thing, is that as a black man, I don't think it's my duty, job of any sort, to try to convince white people under any circumstances that I should be treated as human. I don't. If that hasn't come through and sat with somebody yet, then basically fuck off, right? But the idea that I have, and this is why I'm so stuck on that step one, is that there are legit tangible things that you can do police reform wise that at least allows me as a black man to feel comfortable driving my fucking car and to make it home after something. All the police and traffic stops that are completely unnecessary. There's no reason we should be pulling over anybody with expired tags, but you can send them a fucking ticket in the mail. Or send a tow truck to the goddamn house and take the goddamn car, right?
Send a ticket in the mail.
There is no reason anybody should be getting pulled over for air freshener around their windshield. There should be no reason that you have a guy who gets pulled over that gets asked to even get out of the car. Why are we escalating a situation where we can de-escalate a situation?
He's drunk driving or something. Yeah.
Right. There's no reason for a lot of that stuff to occur.
You should be pulled over. The only thing I think you should be pulled over for is, one, if you have, like, if they run your plates just as a routine check and they have a warrant out for your arrest.
But here's the thing. Even Dante Wright, in that sort of situation, had a warrant out for his arrest. But apparently, or at least clearly to me, I'm hoping, and this is me even trying to give a cop benefit of the doubt, that it would say on that warrant what it was for. And if it's a non-violent warrant,
it was for a missed court date, right?
It was a missed court date that even when you look in the court docs, got sent to the wrong address, which is the only reason he didn't get the summons. So you're talking about you got a warrant out and they treat it like a high-risk stop at that point. And that's not to mention all the other things that they fucked up in that sort of situation. You're never going to handcuff somebody if they're right next to a driver's door. You're setting them up to fail. You're setting them up to fail. You take them to the back of the car so they can't do it. You don't half-assedly put handcuffs on somebody. You put fucking handcuffs on them. Like they did every which way wrong in this sort of situation.
Policing,
every which way they did it wrong. There was an officer in New Mexico, I'm sorry I can't remember his name, a few weeks back, that pulled over a guy who had a warrant out for his arrest. Guy in a pickup truck. Officer walks up to the dude's driver's side window, sees he's got an AR-15 in the center console. He asks the guy, dude looks white, I think Hispanic. He tells the guy, hey, can you get out of the car and hand me that gun? Officer just kind of lackadaisical walking back to his patrol car. Dude pulls that AR-15, shoots him twice in the chest, walks right around the truck, pops him in the back of the head. Real shit. But you can see in that sort of situation that you had somebody that did not follow the playbook as far as policing, number one, at all. Because in the circumstance, but did give that guy the benefit of the doubt compared to somebody else. And it cost him his life. And I hate to talk about it that way because the dude is dead, but come on. But I think the other aspect that you were talking about is that, like, the defund the police thing, which I understand the terminology of it kind of rubs people the wrong way, but I mean, it's kind of true. I mean, at least we need to do certain aspects of rearranging the funds.
Pretty much, not all, but like 95% of policies under the umbrella of defund the police are things that I think, I personally would support, I think have a good chance of becoming law and policy, and maybe not nationally, but in a large number of jurisdictions across the United States over a period of not huge to a distant future with work. The problem with that is, as you mentioned, words matter. Defund the police is a horrible slogan. Now, don't get me wrong. The right's going to demonize whatever you do, right? But the problem is, the right didn't come up with this slogan. We came up. It's another thing. So, like,
but I'm sick. But that's the thing, is that it goes hand in hand, because there's another part of me that's sick and tired of whitewashing anything for fucking white folk.
Yeah, but of course you're sick and tired of that. Everyone's sick and tired of that.
But see, that's so when we get the situations that happen, I think this is the reason I get upset with you or other people, is that the incident happens. You got white people that are majority in this country, and then we get looked upon as these situations as unfortunate accidents and kind of move on to the next one. Same thing we feel about mass shootings.
Mass shootings, And
it feels fucked up to me, because, look, we can try to elicit change in certain areas in our communities. I know there's a lot of things as far as reform that's happened in Baltimore, where I live. I know in D.C. there's been talk about some things as far as political reform, but last time I checked, D.C. is no longer even a majority black city anymore. But Baltimore, at least, there's certain things on the books that are actually trying to get done. But it's hard pressure me. Like, I feel as though I know what needs to happen as far as policing goes, right? But I think I get scared when I hear liberal whites, moderate whites talk about unfortunate accidents, talk about how fucked up things are, and then we just wait for the next thing to happen, where I'm living every fucking day in fear of my goddamn life.
You're absolutely right to be feel that way, and you're absolutely right to be, because that language, it does give you permission to dismiss it and go along with your daily life, along with, like, thoughts and prayers with mass shootings. Thoughts and prayers, back to the grind. And you're absolutely right to feel that way, because it needs to be a sustained pressure campaign of pressuring local and elected leaders, and that's where I think the language you use to pressure them matters. If you use things like police reform, police accountability, police what was the other one? Reinvention of police. All those sound good. More importantly, they don't scare people. Like, so there's been like a lot of a lot of fretting amongst the Democrats, at least in Congress, I'm sure elsewhere, about the defund the police, whether that cost them seats in the House specifically over 2020. I don't know how many seats it cost them, if it cost them any. But I do know that they did polling amongst largely Hispanics in Florida and Texas.
Yeah, in Florida and Spanish, where you had the Republicans playing fake ad campaigns on what defund the police was.
Yeah.
They completely misrepresented everything that was happening.
Texas as well, too, in Spanish.
But see, that's my thing, is that what language doesn't matter. We get that.
Yeah.
But the explanation of what defund the police and everything are, in my mind, I hear defund the police, and I know clearly exactly what it is, and where it is it needs to be, and where it needs to go. Majority of black people that I know understand and fully comprehend what it is that happened. It is a big difference between what defund the police means now compared to 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. What defund the police really meant to people. So I think the part of me is on the iota of, instead of debating the semantics of what the fuck defund the police means, how about you guys, white people, anybody that's going to be ally is supposed to go out there and try to get it
what
done.
Defund the police means is, I don't care about debating the semantics. There are important policy distinctions within what people call. I just don't want to call it defund the police again.
The thing is, it doesn't matter. What? I really don't honestly think it matters.
I don't know that it matters. I do know that it's not helpful.
I do know that what's not helpful to me is having the debate or even the discussion on whether or not the terminology means anything. But where it is that there's actual shit that can get done if we're actually just having a conversation.
But the reason you debate whether the terminology is useful is because framing is so important in politics to mobilize. So the political system in the United States is a fuck foobar. It's a fuck beyond all recognition. Nonetheless, one of the only ways to affect change is to get people to vote people in or out of office based on an issue.
So you think if we change the wording from defund the police to repositioning, reinventing the police, it solves our issue?
No, I do not. But I think it becomes an asset instead of liability.
And see, there's a part of me that thinks that discussion itself is a cop-out.
It is. I mean, so all of this is a cop-out from having to actually do it, because the reason is, so like,
because the conversation itself that happens, like, typically me and you can have a conversation as far as what you said at step one, and it's something that I have prevalent on my social media, it's something that I prevalently talk about, is that I'm not for cutting cop salaries. I actually think the cop salaries should be quadruple what they are, because it should be a specialized field. There's no reason that being a police officer should be harder to do, should be easier to do than becoming a fucking barber or a hairdresser.
Yeah.
When you have a gun in your hands and every interaction you have somebody could be life and death.
You have the state's authorization to use force.
To kill someone, and you can't come back from that, right? There should be more than that. Like, I'm for making sure that they have certain incentives when it comes to officers being from the communities in which they know.
Oh, that's one I forgot. My step one is that officers police the communities in which they live. That's
absolutely
a huge one. Yeah.
And that to me is a big thing. Is like getting kids and getting people to understand. That's why, look, we grew up in DC. Across the street from our middle school was the Jello Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. The Police Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. And our Police Boys and Girls Club was something that you had police officers that would go and coach kids in soccer and football and basketball. So you had the cops, the people could put a face to the cops could put a face to the people. So when they do pull up next to the guy, they can look at him as a human because they fucking know him.
Yeah. And that's huge. And all those things are important. But
if you explain that to somebody, that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. To me, instead of having the conversation of defund the police and not defund the police, talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Like, have the conversation. Like, you got all your white family in Missouri, right?
Yeah.
That I'm sure some of them probably don't necessarily fall on the same spectrum I do as guys.
You'd be surprised how many of them do.
I don't know. I see your dad's Facebook page.
Oh, no. Those aren't family. Those are friends.
All right, whatever.
Yeah. There are a lot of people in Missouri don't fit.
All right, cool. There's a Missouri crew, and I'm like, all right, I'm a little stand off.
No. They're QAnon crazies.
But to me, it's like the conversation has to happen there, because there are certain things that I think are universal regardless of race. And, like, to me, black people have been here in this country since its inception.
Mm-hmm.
We've been treated second-class citizens since its inception.
Well, that's not true. You weren't treated as citizens at all.
Period. Yeah. Not human.
Yeah, not
subhuman.
Yeah, subhuman.
I don't even care about having the racial talk. What I want is if Officer Billy Bob Joe is the most racist fucking person on the face of the planet,
he can't kill you.
He can't kill me.
And that is completely legitimate and should be object number one.
And that's my thing, is that when we start talking about things in these untangible ways of changing people's hearts and minds, of making sure that people who should know by now that you can trust a black person that still think of us as second class or subhuman, why do I need to trying to get across to them? Is there really anything that's going to change that person's mind? Or do we just prevent them from being put in a situation where they can murder people?
I absolutely agree that we need to. That's the starting point.
But if you had the conversation as far as trying to solve the racism or trying to change words of defund the police, trying to do all these other kind of things,
you may distract from.
Do you distract, or do you put a goal in mind that's too big to even accomplish?
So I am. I do have no clue. It may very well be. You may very well be dead right that because we didn't get to talk about my anti-racism reforms that I've been coming up in my head. But
you want to show the people the Blue Lives Matter thing?
Yeah.
This is what I walked into.
I was gonna put it as my background.
Yeah. All right. Keep going.
And so whatchamacallit? So you may very well be right that if you distract from police accountability, police reform, with all this other stuff that I think is necessary to ultimately achieve even equality in policing.
Do you think it happens in our lifetime?
No.
Equality in policing?
No.
Do you think that the reform... All right, so and I agree with you. I don't think that's possible. But do you think that we can have common sense conversations that aren't even racially based, that just prevent from police from killing people?
Yes, I do.
We can solve that in our lifetime.
In our lifetimes, absolutely. But I think we can move further towards the...
one step at a time now.
Yeah.
And that's where... I think that's the crux of the conversation I have with you, is the one step at a time. If white person hates my black ass, I'd like that to change.
but as long as they don't kill you.
Don't kill me.
Yeah.
As long as that dude's not in the way of shooting me on my way home, think whatever you want to think.
That's fair. So that's fair. I didn't think of it in terms of, and I should have thought of it because in politics it's all the time. Politics is too often a sum-zero game. So you have so much time, so much energy, so much political capital, and you can either spend it on the concrete police accountability and reforms that will make a difference a day, 6 months after they're passed, or and in an ideal world you'd be able to do that and the shit that's going to make a large
ideal world.
But it's not an ideal world,
and that's where you got to take the baby steps and the actual things that will work. Thank you so much for joining me for this special edition of This Is Vegas and ASOS. I'm sick and tired of talking to white people about this shit, so I'm gonna
it's important we should mention that Tom Brady...
That's your count.
I'm sorry. Tom Brady is now shilling for Qatar. He's the chief Qatar propaganda minister.
It is just like a white person to take the discussion that we were supposed to have and then put their own political agenda and spin on in hatred for Tom
Brady.
Once again, thank you, Reza. Thank you, Brennan, for joining me. This has been the first in a long line of hopefully This Is Vegas episodes. Hopefully you like it all. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Thank you, guys.